All right, pay attention, guys, because we are going to expose something today that not a lot of other people are talking about. I don't hear anyone else focusing on this. But right now, the United States is currently under a psychological spell. Yep, this is a spell. We're talking a mass emotional contagion, and it has taken hold of the nation. Well, primarily in the states where all of the madness is going on. But where we have all of this protest and all of this fighting that's going on, this is where feelings override facts. And law enforcement is now being treated like a threat instead of a necessity. And we got to understand the psychology of what's going on so we can get a better understanding of all of this craziness. So I'm going to do a two-part series, and we're going to dig into the psychology of all of this craziness that's going on. It all starts, the root of this whole thing is one big fat contradiction. Now, what is that contradiction? Here it is. Immigration laws exist. ICE is legally empowered by the Congress of the United States. Presidents of both parties in the past have enforced removal of illegal immigrants for decades. However, a portion of our population currently believes that enforcement is illegal, the actual enforcement of those laws. They think they've been brainwashed to believe that federal agents have no authority. And they actually believe that sanctuary cities should have the right to override federal law, and that is false. Okay, so in this two-part series, I'm going to cover 10 psychological terms. We're going to do 5 on this video and 5 in the next. And these are terms that are going to accurately describe the madness that we are witnessing in the streets of Minnesota, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, not Oregon, Seattle, Washington. There's some craziness going on in Oregon, and other states like Illinois, Chicago, New York, okay? In these blue states that have the sanctuary cities that they stand behind. So let's get this started here with the first 5 terms. And then I want you guys to post your comments and tell me which ones you have never heard and which ones you learned the most about. So term number 1, mass psychogenic illness. And that's abbreviated MPI. And what is MPI? This is a form of collective delusion where groups of people adopt the same irrational beliefs or emotional reactions despite not having a sliver of factual basis.
If you are driving around our city in a mass with a gun, asking people for their papers and sending them to concentration
I think he just asked her where their people went.
Nazis, go.
What is he asking you? Do you know?
Move my car.
Yeah, I know. You can still get. I know you can. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this term is useful for describing the widespread belief that ICE is somehow illegal. Okay, it also describes the emotional contagion that we're witnessing during the protest. That's just like mob spirit. Have you ever heard of mob spirit? Some say that contagion is a demon. That's a biblical term that describes what we're seeing when you have mob rule, okay? And it also describes group panic or outrage, disconnected from law or policy. All right. The second term is collective cognitive dissonance. Now, when a group holds two contradictory beliefs but resolves the tension by rejecting all of the facts, that's where you end up with collective cognitive dissonance. That's like a group of people saying, yeah, we need raw laws to rule over a nation so we can have safe neighborhoods. We have to have laws. But then they'll turn right around and say, enforcing immigration law is immoral. Okay, so rather than reconciling the contradiction, the obvious contradiction, the group rejects the law itself. And that's why we see the craziness that's going on where these people are tearing things up, ramming ICE agents, beating people with, the newest thing was the attack on the ICE agent with a broomstick and a snow shovel, okay? Because they think that enforcing immigration law is immoral. But they do think that we gotta have laws so we can have a peaceful nation. Moving on to the third term, it is groupthink. Now, this is a classic term that describes when people suppress critical thinking to stay aligned with their in-group.
People need to show up with guns to face you guys. We got your time for an armed resistance against the United States of America.
All right, so this shows up as blind agreement with political narratives. All right, so whenever the leadership of, say, for example, the Democratic Party, they brainwash their followers to believe that immigration law wasn't intended to be taken seriously, it's just a suggestion. Well, that's groupthink. Everyone falls in line with that, and they will only listen to their political leaders. When you have hostility towards dissent, so if anybody dissents from this whole notion that ICE agents don't have the authority to arrest and detain illegals, that is groupthink. Or how about the emotional overreaction to all of the enforcement actions that we're seeing in mini Somaliota? Well, these emotional overreactions, that's groupthink. And that's why we see one particular group that seems to have been infected by this mind virus more than any other. Now, I'm going to let you say it. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I want you to post in the comments what demographic, what sector of society here in the United States is suffering the most from groupthink. And these folks are ruled by their emotions. And we see numerous emotional overreactions to the enforcement by ICE agents. Post it in the comment. What demographic is that? Let's see if you can guess. Number 4, moral panic. Okay, so a population becomes convinced that a normal or lawful activity is now all of a sudden a threat to society. So ICE enforcement is framed as dangerous or illegal, despite the fact that these laws have been on the books for 80 some odd years. So now we see that federal agents are portrayed as the villains. Those are the bad guys, not the illegals who are being detained. In fact, quick fact. In Minnesota, 65% of the illegals that are detained, they're criminals that have a record, who were arrested and released back out into the streets. And so the federal agents have to come in and get them because Minnesota and the Minneapolis Police Department, they refuse to turn over those illegals to ICE. And because of that, that's why we've got ICE out in the streets. And so all of a sudden, because of the moral panic that's going on, it's the federal agents who are the villains, not the illegals who have broken the law. 100% of them have broken federal law. 65% of them are violent criminals. Okay, and lastly, protesters respond emotionally rather than factually. Now, this comes clear when we see, say, the last incident, the shooting. We don't need to get into that again. Or any time that ICE agents knock somebody on the ground, yank somebody out of a car. Instead of looking at the events that led up to that, okay, moral panic kicks in where we're only focusing on the end result. So the protesters have this completely unhinged, overly emotional reaction rather than looking at the facts. Another key example would be someone lights off fireworks and sends a rocket right in the middle of a bunch of ICE agents. It explodes. And then that person gets tracked down, hogtied, and arrested. And so the protesters have an emotional reaction. They don't look at the facts that this person lit this great big firework rocket that could have blinded somebody, could have burned somebody. They only look at that person being taken to the ground. Or say the lady who pulls up and is blocking the way, won't get out of our car, and continues to argue with the ICE agents as they tell her, leave, leave, leave. They told her multiple times, keep your car moving, get out of here, you're in the way, and she's yelling at them. So then they had to remove her from the vehicle. They had to snatch her out, and she's just in a complete meltdown. So rather than looking at what led up to that, the protesters respond emotionally. They're yanking this poor lady out of the car. They had to cut the seatbelt to get her out and then fight her just to get the handcuffs on and remove her from the scene and to get the car moved out of the way. So that is moral panic. Now, I've talked before about the caveman brain, which is the limbic system, and that is where fight or flight kicks in. This is what leads to moral panic, or the reason why we have moral panic. Because when the limbic system kicks in and you go into fight or flight, you lose the ability of rational thinking. There is no rational thinking going on, and the frontal cerebral cortex is short-circuited. Fight or flight. That's it. No logical thinking at that point. Now, the last on the list here for part one is collective narcissism. So this happens when you've got a group that believes that it has the moral superiority, and they react aggressively when reality contradicts their false belief.
Oh, there's my house. Arrest them! They killed someone! Arrest! Mayor! 037. Put on your head! Ice out of Minnesota! Ice out of Minnesota! Ice out of Minnesota! Ice out of Minnesota!
So this explains the outrage when the federal government is enforcing the law. You know, they got this moral superiority. We should have open borders. We should let everyone in the world come in here because we just feel that it's the right thing to do. Okay? It's the belief that good people shouldn't have borders. You know, we're a welcoming nation and we were built on immigration, and that's the right thing to do. And so there's no reason for us to enforce a border security or deport people who don't abide by immigration law. Forget the fact that we got to this point as a great nation because we enforced those laws. All right. It's also when you see the emotional attacks on anyone who challenges the whole narrative, okay, moral superiority. If anybody challenges the notion that we should have open borders and that there's no such thing as an illegal because we live on stolen land. I did a video on that. You can check that out if you want. Just dig down deep. It's there.
I am on stolen land! 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 I am on stolen land!
Well, they come out with the claws, the fangs are out, the claws are out, and all of a sudden we have these irrational, emotional attacks. Why? How could you even think that? That's horrible because we are the moral superiority. We don't believe in enforcing the laws. Maybe those laws got there by mistake, but we're above law. We have moral superiority. Now, which one of these 5 psychological terms is new to you? And which one is your favorite for describing the madness that we see going on around the nation? And are you excited to hear part 2, where we're going to get into 5 more terms? And I'm going to keep it going even beyond this because I think that a very significant percentage of the population in the United States is in a state of psychological breakdown. And a lot of these people need to be institutionalized. I don't know if there's enough medication to help all of the irrational behavior that is going on. So we're going to dig more into this, and I'll be real curious to hear what your thoughts are about these psychological terms. So make sure that you tick that notification bell because the next one is going to be even better than this one. That's all I got. We'll see you on the next edition